to the Power of One. Today, I am going to be speaking with Joseph Smiley, who I saw was in an article, and this article disturbed my soul. It's called Foster Care Agencies in PA Took Millions Owed to Kids in Their Care, often keeping them in the dark. This article was written by Julie Christine and Steve Volk. Sorry if I mispronounced the names wrong. From Resolve Philly for Spotlight PA, April 3rd, 2025. Thank you so much for joining me today, Joseph.
Thanks for having me.
Joseph, first, let's just speak about your childhood. And from the article, I take it that you were brought up in the foster care system. So if you do not mind walking the viewers through your childhood and your teen years, and then we'll dive into the article.
Okay. Um, well, you are correct. Uh, Firstly, I was brought up in the system from the age of 3, and at the age of 18, albeit a few years after I turned a few months after I turned 18, I was then asked to go fend for myself for the most part. Um, Yeah, I wasn't even really surprised, to be honest, because during my time in the system, I've been moved around a lot. I've lived in respites, group homes. Uh, there was this one time I was very young. I think I was about 10 or 11. Was staying at a place called Bethana. It's just outside of Philly. It's like a residential style campus for children in the system who don't really have a place to go. Like, maybe there's no foster parents that wanted to take them in, so they would go there. Um, there was even a time when I was sent to it's like kind of like a hospital for like the mentally disturbed. I was accused of setting a fire by one of my foster families, and my DHS worker believed them despite me retelling the event in a bunch of different ways. And so ultimately, I had to leave from that home, and they sent me to that hospital. So yeah, when I was 18 and they told me to leave, I wasn't even really surprised because I never really um, got used to being planted anywhere. Even schools. I remember there was times when I would make friends. As hard as that was, I would finally manage to connect with people, and then like 2 weeks later, I'm like, you know, I'm gone. I don't even remember their names or which schools I went to. I was just, passed around a lot. Um,
Walk us through, if you don't mind. So I don't know if you remember three, because I don't remember when I was 3 or 4 or 5. I remember kindergarten because I sucked my thumb, and my kindergarten teacher, her daughter, sucked her thumb, her left thumb. That's the only reason why I remember kindergarten. But anyway, so from what age do you remember being in the system?
I remember my first. I have two memories prior to the memory that I have of being taken away. The first memory I can remember is my dad walking in. I actually have 11 brothers and sisters. There's 12 of us, and I remember
Biological?
biological, yes. Now I remember when my dad, I guess he was getting off of work, he brought us all candy apples, and that was like my first memory. Um, Even though they're bad for your teeth, I will always love candy apples now because of that. I just remember him walking in with the candy apples, and like I'm looking like, what is that? It's red, but it's not like the apple skin. And then everyone just got happier. Everything got more fun because my dad was home. That's the first memory. The second memory, I remember sleeping on the floor at home. I think I was sleeping on the floor. Everyone was going to sleep. And I remember looking on the wall and seeing like a peacock feather. And it kind of terrified me. And that paired with the song that was playing, Moments in Love, which It's like a smooth jazz song. It's so great. For years, I didn't know what the song was called, but I would recognize it from WJJZ because that song was playing that night. And then
How
the
old were you?
I had to have been like two because this was the year before I actually remember
You remembered
being.
that.
Yeah, but I remember the next memory after that I remember is being in a Northeast Treatment Center van. I remember it was like gold, and we were driving away from the rest of my family. It was me, my brother Randy, my two younger sisters, they're twins, Julie and Juliet, and my sister Angel were all in the car. And I remember looking out the back window, seeing my mom and my other siblings just like going through the absolute most, almost as if they were chasing us, and like I was reaching out for them. So that would be my first official memory of being in the system. And prior to that, I was so young that I only have two memories with my family. Um,
Biological family.
yeah. Now I still remember my first foster home, and it was so bad that like she would punish us to the absolute extreme. Like there was times I remember her name to this day.
Nope.
That's how traumatic that situation was.
Okay. And you were three at that time?
Yeah. Um so like she would like I don't know if it was just me or the other kids, I don't know, but I remember that she used to trap me in the basement a lot. Now the way the basement was set up, it was connected to the living room. So like if I did something that she didn't like, or she got upset or whatever, she would tell me to go sit in the basement, and I would ask if she could turn the light on, and she would say no. So the only bit of light that I would get was from the top of the stairs, right underneath the door. And I remember sitting there. Um, I remember being scared out of my mind because some type of creature or a person in a mask, I don't know, comes darting up the steps most times that I'm in there. And I don't know if that was like a part of the punishment or what, but um added to that, she used to spank us using these 2x4 beams. Um and my I think my mom knew about a lot of this because when we first got to the system, she tried her best to like stay in touch with us. Like my mom was trying her best. Like she didn't have her husband with her, but she wanted to get her kids, even though she couldn't really financially take care of us.
Is
Um,
that why you and a couple of your siblings had to go into foster care?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Um, my dad was the breadwinner, and I think there was a bit of jealousy from within my family. One of my own aunts actually allegedly was the one who reported us to DHS saying we didn't have any food or we didn't have any water. And at least that's how my mom and my sister tells the story, that is the reason why DHS even got involved after my dad passed away.
So, but it
Um,
was only a few of your siblings that were taken, including you, correct?
yeah, so anyone who wasn't 18, I think that only one of my siblings, no, I think we all went into the system because even my oldest sister, Hosanna, I don't think she was 18 at the time.
Okay. So age
So
plays a factor.
yeah, because if you're 18, you can't really go to the system because you're already legally an adult.
Okay. All right. So now
So
how long were you in the first foster home?
as far as the time frame, I was in 15 foster homes. I know that number for sure, but I don't think that, I mean, I don't even remember exactly how long I was there. I just remember that she was beating us with you know, the 2x4s. She was locking me in the basement, and I also remember that she didn't really feed me like enough. So like the food was like so minimum, like worse than school lunches, and it was to the point where something really really traumatic happened where I was sick and she put this brown stuff on my finger, and I used to suck my thumb as well. And so she put this brown stuff on my finger and um made me eat it and told me that it was human bowels. And then when I got older, I found out that that brown stuff was actually called Father John, and that it's designed to like make you feel better.
Mm,
However, growing up, imagine growing up thinking that you ate feces for the majority
right.
of your life. So this first woman was not fit to be a foster parent. I don't really know how she even got past the screening or how they screen people in general. But then after that, it was just I'm just being bounced around. I actually found one family that really wanted to take me in, but they were a respite family, and as a result, they weren't allowed to like adopt people. Or I
What does that
wasn't.
mean?
So respite is like a temporary stop before you
Mm,
go to your next destination, which that next destination is usually a person who's actually a certified foster parent. Whereas though the respite might be people in the waiting space.
okay. Okay. Now, why were you bounced around from 15 families?
Well, I've always been very hyper. Um, I've always been very energetic. I don't think that I was a bad kid, but it's kind of like now I have my own two children now. Sometimes Sarai, I'm just like, oh, but then I look and I see she has a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And if she's around adults that don't care about her well-being and don't try to look through the energy and see what she really needs. Like maybe she needs more
Hmm.
outside time, or maybe she needs more sensory, right? Um, then her behavior is going to be perceived as bad. And I don't know. I know a lot of things have changed from when I was a kid till now. Like for instance, spanking is frowned upon now.
Right.
It can present long-term trauma and damages. Whereas
Hmm.
though growing up, how our parents are like, you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And so there's a lot of things that we're learning now about parenting that for whatever reason our parents didn't know. And I think that a lot of my behavior being hyperactive and extremely inquisitive and creative, they probably just wanted me to just shut up and sit down somewhere.
And that's why you bounced around. And I heard you say earlier that you would get acclimated and you would get into a school and you would have friends, and then all of a sudden you're going to another family. Did the someone from DHS come to the house to check on you, to talk to you, to make sure you were safe in all of the homes?
So I did have a DHS worker. Um, I'll never forget her. At first I had all right, so I had two DHS workers. The first DHS worker I had, she was the best. Um she reminded me kind of how you are within your career and how you like help everyone and stuff like that. Even if the job says, "Oh no, you can't do this," you'll find means outside of that. We're like, "Well, these people need this, so I'm going to get it done." That's kind of how my first DHS worker was. I've had more good memories with her than I've had in the homes that my second DHS worker was putting me into. But
Mm,
I think she got fired or left because being in this field now, I know there's certain lines we don't cross. And me being a kid, I remember going with her to her house to make Rice Krispie treats.
mm,
Now, this is my caseworker. So obviously, if someone found out, hey, you took the kid home to hang out with him, da da da, um, that would be grounds for termination. So I understand, why she was no longer my DHS worker after a certain amount of time. But my second DHS worker, I don't think. I think she might have just been suffering. What is it that we call it when we endure so much of other people's trauma that we kind of get burnt out from it?
secondary trauma.
Yes. So she was just numb to it. And so, like, I'm explaining certain things to her. She's been in this business for however long. And I could just, every time I saw her, I could just see that she was tired, probably even too
Mhm.
tired to fight, especially for someone like me. But yeah, she did make visits. She did come and check up on me. Not that it really made a difference. I think her solution to solving my problems was to just move me somewhere else.
Mm,
But each time I moved, this that you know I was still having the similar issues with the families, whether it's me being alienated or whether it's me being you know, I guess malnourished would be the case, or me
mm.
being abused verbally or otherwise. And so the more and more this kept happening, things kept happening, and I just kept moving around.
Did that affect you as an adult? Are you still struggling with some things? Like, did you have PTSD? So, does it affect you now as an adult?
Um, it's affecting me now. At one point, it didn't, but at the time, I was in my 20s and I had this intense desire to make music and just share a story of any part of my story that I can musically. You can't see, but I have my guitars hanging on me behind the wall. This is actually like my office space, so I use this space to create a lot. In the time frame where it did not affect me, that's all I was doing. I was going to work. I had no real desire to I was fully invested in creating, and so I was so distracted with that, or so focused on that it seemed like a lot of the trauma and effects of it just kind of seemed to sit on the back burner. My
Mm,
relationships weren't suffering, my friendships weren't suffering. I didn't have nightmares. But now that I have a family of my own, this is like about 10 years later. Now that I have a family of my own, I do it does affect me. I guess I'm kind of afraid of DHS. No one's perfect, and the economy is what the economy is. So
yeah,
sometimes we're struggling, and there's all kinds of thoughts that go through my head now that I have children
I
that
understand.
that kind of tie me back to my upbringing. Even me and my wife, sometimes it's hard for us to connect, and we don't understand each other. But so here's one example of how it's still affecting me. My wife is very social. She is like the life of the party. She has lots of friends and family. So like she's always getting invited to events for us and the kids. And even if I can't go, she'll always bring me a plate. And then she'll get mad because I won't eat the plate. But then we had to sit down and we talked about it. And I explained to her, I think the reason why I don't eat the plates that you bring me from these events is because growing up, I was so used to being left out of events that when they finally came back with food and they like, oh yeah, this is from the party. I'm like, man, I don't want it. I want the experience that comes with it. And so
Mm,
now when I'm not able to go spend time with the family at these events, if she brings food back, subconsciously I'm not even thinking about eating it. So like, yeah,
it goes back to what happened.
right.
Okay.
So it is affecting me in subtle ways, kind of like that.
Okay. Now, the article that I read was unbelievable. How did you get hooked up with the authors of this story, and how does it work? So is it that a foster parent will get a check, but also the child is owed a check? Break this down for us.
So I actually got introduced to Steve Vogt through an old friend of mine who was once one of my caseworkers at Valley Youth House. So Valley Youth House is the reason why I even didn't end up homeless, or like, I mean, I don't think I would have ever gotten on drugs, but like I definitely needed help. So, but they're the reason why I actually had a fighting chance, because when I turned 18 and I went to stay with my sister at the time, um, she was living on 60th Street. She's like the only one of my siblings that I can actually connect with. We all grew apart, so that's understandable. She let me come stay with her temporarily, like a couple weeks, while I tried to get into Valley's house because I was previously in Achieving Independence Center, but they said that I needed to transfer out to Valley's house to get my housing situated, even though I completed the AIC program. So I had a caseworker there named Sarah Schwartz, and she was wonderful to this day. I would consider her a friend. She connected me to Steve Vogt after finding out, I guess they're friends, and she found out that he was working on this story to discover where the foster youth SSI checks are going. Because I don't really know how it works on the back end, but I do know that my dad was in the military, and my dad worked. And when I turned 19, I started receiving SSI checks for like 3 months. That was like $700 every 2 weeks. And so we did the math, and like he determined there's no way that's all the money that you were owed. And
Mm,
so coming up with this same scenario in other people's stories, he started to do his own investigation, and then that's how they determined all this money being siphoned off. He's spoken to people, he's done interviews, he's looked at documents from these programs, and so his investigation was going to happen with or without my involvement.
right.
So that's pretty much the gist of that. Now, in terms of like how it actually works, in terms of how they're actually able to get away with this and how much money they're taking from children every year, I have no idea. I was in the system for 15 years. And so you can imagine if it really is about $10,000 a year, somebody owe me a check.
So who would it go to? You know what I'm saying? And how all of a sudden, here's my question. So you received these three checks. Did you receive these three checks because your dad passed away and then you got these three checks? Or like how did it come about and how did you get your three checks?
So uh, someone from Valley Youth House actually helped me sign up for SSI. And it was after I got approved and I went through the whole process. Um, I started receiving a $700 check every 2 weeks, but it was only for 3 months. And after
Mm,
that 3 months, those biweekly checks for 700 stopped. Um, and it was definitely only 3 months because I had just moved into my place on 60th and Walnut, provided to me by Valley Youth House. I was there for 3 months, started getting checks, got comfortable. I've squandered that money with my friends. This was the first time I was actually able to have friends and really invest in a friendship. So like I'm going down to the gallery. I'm young. I'm young and dumb.
right.
Right? I'm going to the gallery. I'm bringing them. We having a good time. 3 months later, that money stops. Now, was I supposed to go and reapply? I don't. I have no idea. To this day, I don't know.
Mhm, mhm. Being an adult and past 18, and you speak about this wonderful caseworker who helped you, is that an ongoing process, or after 21 does it stop? After 24 does it stop? How does it work?
So I think that as long as you're over 18, you can claim your SSI benefits. Now, I don't know if there's a gap, like a age cap on that, or different tiers in terms of like this year you get this much, and once you get that much, you gotta wait till next year to get the rest. I'm really not sure. Like I said, I may still be able to claim the rest of that money now. Um,
Hmm.
I
But now,
applied.
can you still take advantage of the services from an agency, or are you too old?
Now, you mean foster youth agencies, so like
Yes.
Covenant House, for example.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
they do have age limits. So Covenant House was one of those places that I ended up having to stay. Um, and they basically told me that I was too old. So once
Mm,
you turn 25, you are no longer eligible to stay at the Covenant House.
okay.
And I think that Valley Youth House has similar requirements as well as AIC.
Okay. So if someone was to read this article, which again I think is a great article, and they had questions, who would you recommend they get in touch with?
Questions regarding
If
the
money is owed to them
okay.
based on this article, and someone reads this article, who would they contact?
I would start with contacting the Social Security Administration, but not just that, because I know that this is an ongoing story that's unfolding.
Mm.
My introduction to Steve Vogt took place 4 years ago when my daughter was just born.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, this article is 4 years in the making, but I know that there's still digging to look for a long-term plan. And I remember he mentioned something to me about a bill. I don't
Okay.
know any details about that bill, but I know that he's trying to get a bill passed that will prevent that from happening in the future. And so somewhere in that bill might incorporate a means for people to get money back that was taken from them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, that's awesome. And maybe they can contact their elected official
Mhm.
for some help. I want to thank you so much for being vulnerable, for sharing your story, and for being a part of the article. Sometimes we don't understand why we go through what we go through, which is horrible. But I will say that you turned out to be an amazing young man. I know you're a wonderful father and a wonderful husband. So thank you so much for sharing your story because you are going to help someone else. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I know there are a number of children who are in the foster system. Please understand child abuse is not okay, whether it's physical or mental. Express what's going on to your caseworker. That is so, so important. And hopefully, you have some funds that are waiting for you to brighten up your day. Peace and love.